I stand in my Manhattan hotel room, gazing out at Central Park's trees. Once, I was America's Confederate First Lady. I defended slavery while despising it. I predicted our defeat. Now I've become everything the South taught me to hate. I escaped. How? That is my story. My name is Varina Howell Davis. Born half northern, half southern, belonging nowhere truly. I married a man 18 years older, a widower haunted by his first wife's ghost. I served a doomed nation while knowing truth nobody dared speak. Then I fled to New York completely. Imagine inheriting power you never wanted. Imagine marrying a man who loves another woman's memory. Imagine leading millions toward defeat while knowing the truth but cannot voice it. Then imagine escaping, building yourself anew. Could you do this? That is precisely my story. That is what I did. May 7, 1826, Marengo Plantation, Louisiana. I was born to William Howell and Margaret Kemp. My father's grandfather governed New Jersey. My mother's father fled Ireland to plant cotton. Nobody told me this fortune was stolen from human beings. Nobody explained their suffering. I would learn painfully. The Briars, my childhood home near Natchez. Cotton wealth surrounded everything like the air we breathed. Enslaved workers filled the fields endlessly. I believed this world eternal and natural. I never questioned why some people served others. I never wondered about their terror or pain. This ignorance shaped me. When I turned 13, my father's creditors arrived. They seized our home. They took furniture, silverware, human beings, all went to public auction. Shame, humiliation. Wealthy relatives rescued us, though it felt like drowning. I learned security is fragile. Pride precedes collapse. Survival depends on others' mercy. This lesson shaped everything. Philadelphia called. 10 years old, I boarded a northbound coach to Madame Grelot's academy. Northern girls surrounded me, wealthy, sophisticated, educated, alive with forbidden ideas. The North revealed itself as intellectual, progressive, beautiful. I fell in love with a world Mississippi despised. Something in me had already fled forever. Judge George Winchester became my tutor. Harvard-educated, brilliant, dangerous. He taught Latin, French, literature, history, critical thinking. He taught me to question authority, to read deeply, to think independently. Meanwhile, Southern girls learned needlework and silence. I was becoming something unsuited for Southern womanhood, unsuited for anything. By age 19, I was tall, thin, olive-skinned, unmarriageable by Southern standards. My father was bankrupt. I had no dowry, no suitors called. Men preferred prettier, quieter, richer women. I seemed destined for spinsterhood, irrelevance, obscurity. Then December that the 1843 arrived. Everything changed completely. Jefferson Davis appeared. Then my life began its unravelling. Hurricane Plantation, Christmas 1843. He studied me with intense eyes. Joseph Davis's younger brother, widower, 35. He had buried a wife named Sarah Knox Taylor. He still worshipped her memory. I understood immediately he would always love her more than me. I married him anyway. I always knew I was second. February 26, 1845. We married at the Briar. A small, quiet ceremony. None of his family attended. They had opposed the match. His brother Joseph controlled him financially. His relatives resented me as an outsider. From our first day together, I was invading their household, unwanted and tolerated barely. We moved to Briarfield, our new home, but Joseph Davis controlled the land. I had no legal claim. Soon, his widowed sister Amanda arrived with 7 children demanding space in our house. Joseph made this decision without consulting me. I spent years sharing my home with his relatives against my will. Jefferson vanished to campaign for Democratic candidates. The Mexican War pulled him away for months. I remained at Briarfield, placed under Joseph Davis's harsh guardianship. I despised this man, yet he controlled my life while my husband fought distant battles. My letters to Jefferson grew bitter. He responded with cold indifference. Our marriage was already breaking. 1846. Jefferson was elected to Congress. I finally escaped to Washington, the capital of the United States. I arrived in a city alive with intellectual debate, political salons, forbidden ideas, northern relatives visiting. The capital intoxicated me completely. I would spend 15 glorious years there. Washington became my real home, my true love, my sanctuary. At 20, I established myself as Washington's most dazzling hostess. My conversations sparkled with literary references. I made friends across party lines. Northern politicians' wives became my closest companions. I was a Whig politically, married to a Democrat. I socialized with abolitionists. I questioned slavery's morality. Washington allowed me to be myself here. 1852, I gave birth to Samuel at age 26. Joy flooded through me. Jefferson became a doting father. For a moment, our marriage found warmth, but Samuel died before his second birthday. No reason given, just childhood illness and death. Varina was born healthy in 1855. Jefferson Jr. came in 1857. Loss followed. Franklin Pierce appointed Jefferson Secretary of War in 1853. I moved in elite circles. Presidents consulted my husband. Yet I remained powerless, a woman in a man's world, educated enough to be threatening, beautiful enough to be noticed, ambitious enough to be resented deeply. I felt politics in my bones but could never grasp it truly. By late 1855, our marriage existed in invisible separation. I loved Washington. He wanted Mississippi plantations. He became a radical secessionist. I wanted compromise. He worshipped slavery as divinely ordained. I called enslaved people human beings with frailties. He revered his dead first wife. I grieved being second. We shared nothing real. June 1862. I confided to my mother, the South does not have resources to win this war. The North's discipline and perseverance will make it invincible. I made this prophecy 1 year into the war. I was right. I had seen it immediately. The South's defeat was inevitable, yet I had to pretend to believe in victory. November 6, 1860. Abraham Lincoln won the presidency. I had told a friend months earlier that secession would be a complete failure. She never believed me. My dread deepened. When Jefferson answered the call to lead the Confederacy, I knew our world would burn. I had predicted it. I was watching my prediction come true helplessly. January 1861. Jefferson resigned from the Senate. I packed my belongings and left Washington forever, the city I had loved more than anywhere on earth. I left my northern relatives. I left my intellectual salon. I left the life I had built. I departed into Mississippi darkness, carrying only resentment and predictions of failure. February 1861, the Montgomery Convention elected Jefferson president of the Confederate States. He had preferred to serve as a general in the field. He did not want this burden, but he accepted it. I waited behind. I was not at his inauguration. Perhaps I knew something he did not understand. The summer 1861, the Confederate capital moved to Richmond, Virginia. The White House of the Confederacy became our residence. Richmond swelled from 40,000 to 140,000 souls in months. Soldiers marched everywhere. Death became ordinary. I moved into this chaos knowing what my husband did not. The North would win completely. Richmond society women resented me immediately. I was too educated. I spoke too much. My olive complexion was unfashionable. Critics called me a mulatto or squaw. I had northern relatives and friends. Rumours spread that I was a spy for Lincoln. My conversation baffled simpler women. My insights threatened provincial men. I tried fitting in. I failed. April 1864, little Joseph, age 5, chased his brother onto the balcony of the White House. He fell. His neck broke. He died. I held my dead son while Richmond prepared for invasion. 2 weeks later, I gave birth to Winnie, life emerging from devastation. I carried both forever, death and birth, separated by 14 days. Varina Howell Davis, Winnie, was born in the war's final year. She became the Confederacy's symbol of hope and endurance. Photographs of her circulated to raise morale. She was the South's possession, not my daughter. They raised her as the nation's mascot. I had lost one child. I grieved losing another to history's demands. I spent my energy where it mattered, visiting hospitals, distributing goods to wounded men, gathering supplies from sympathetic women, writing letters for paralysed soldiers. I brought food to hospitals when Richmond starved. I worked tirelessly while society women gossiped. Years later, even my critics acknowledged I had been a competent, caring First Lady, but I had done it reluctantly. Lydia Johnston, wife of General Joseph E. Johnston, became my public enemy. She accused Jefferson of ruining her husband's career. She accused me of being complicit. Other generals' wives joined the attack. Newspapers published supposed betrayals. Politicians plotted against us. The Confederate government itself became hostile. I was trapped in a nation at war while simultaneously at war with its elite. Union forces closed in. Richmond prepared to abandon the city. Chaos replaced order. Deserters roamed the streets. I organised the escape, arranging carriages, gathering children, securing supplies. I was the efficient administrator of our collapse. My hands moved while my heart despaired. I was fleeing a war I had predicted, a nation I had doubted, a cause I had never believed in. May 1865. Union troops caught us fleeing Georgia. Jefferson was imprisoned at Fort Monroe. We were restricted to Georgia, forbidden to leave. I was effectively a prisoner myself. I had escaped the North once in 1861. Now the North had captured me. I was a captive of history's momentum. For months, Winnie and I were forbidden contact with Jefferson. I fought tirelessly to secure his release. I wrote letters to newspapers. I published articles about his unjust imprisonment. I became a public advocate for a man who did not love me. Even in his prison cell, he remained my consuming purpose. Eventually, we were allowed to join Jefferson at the fort, not as a wife, but as a mother visiting a prisoner. Our family occupied officers' quarters. Winnie was the only child allowed regular visits. She brought him news, messages, connection to the outside world. I was there physically, but my presence changed nothing in his heart. I was still second. Released on bail in 1867, Jefferson faced a ruined fortune. Our Mississippi plantation was confiscated. His property was seized. He was completely destitute. I had to work, something women of my class never did. I had to support my family while my husband attempted to rebuild his career. I borrowed money. I scrimped constantly. Jefferson tried commission houses in England. They collapsed. He accepted positions with insurance companies. They failed spectacularly. He speculated on investments. He lost everything. Every venture he touched crumbled. Meanwhile, I waited and worried, knowing poverty approached, knowing security evaporated, knowing my family might lose everything. I became an expert in financial anxiety and dread. By 1878, I reluctantly moved to Beauvoir with my husband. It was Sarah Dorsey's estate given to Jefferson. I had never wanted to live there. I had resented Sarah Dorsey's presence. I despised country living. Beauvoir meant isolation, Mississippi, the past. The house was architecturally beautiful, but emotionally barren. I was trapped. In 1871, Jefferson was discovered on a train with Virginia Clay, wife of a fellow political prisoner. Newspapers published the scandal across the nation. I was devastated. For 3 years, he had exchanged passionate letters with this woman. He had loved her. He had been willing to betray me publicly. Our marriage was irreparably broken. After the scandal, Jefferson and I lived apart for years. He sought work in Tennessee. I remained in the North. He struggled. I endured his failures. He moved to Beauvoir with Sarah Dorsey, helping him write his memoir. I resented this friendship. I knew it meant something more. Our separation became permanent, even while together. Sarah Dorsey was cultured, educated, wealthy, widowed. She had been my classmate in Philadelphia. She was always prettier, richer, more successful. Now, she was helping Jefferson write his memoir, playing the role that should have been mine. I watched them collaborate on his autobiography. I was written out of my own story. The irony was exquisite. When Sarah Dorsey died of breast cancer in 1879, she left Beauvoir to Jefferson and Winnie, but not to me. In her will, she ensured I would have no legal claim. It was the ultimate humiliation. A woman who knew me was controlling property from beyond death. I had been explicitly excluded. She understood exactly how much this would hurt. I cared for Jefferson in his final years. I helped him write articles. I collaborated on speeches. I was the dutiful wife performing duty, not the passionate partner recapturing lost love. When Jefferson died on December 6, 1889, I grieved not the loss of my husband, but the end of my obligation. His death freed me finally. For the first time in my adult life, I was truly free. I had no husband to serve, no man's ambitions to support, no one's reputation to rehabilitate. I was 63 years old. I had little money, but I possessed freedom. This was a revelation. I could think my own thoughts. I could speak my own opinions. In 1890, I published my own account, Jefferson Davis, ex-president of the Confederate States of America, a memoir by his wife. It was my first publication under my own name. It was my attempt to tell our story, not his story, but ours. The book sold poorly, but it gave me agency. It gave me voice. 1890. Kate Davis Pulitzer visited the South and recognized something. Here was an intelligent woman with important stories to tell. Joseph Pulitzer offered me a job as columnist for the New York World, $1,500 annually, a way out of poverty and into professional life. I accepted immediately. 1891. I accepted Pulitzer's offer. I left the South forever. I packed my belongings and moved to New York City with, say, Winnie. White Southerners erupted in outrage. I was a traitor to my people. I was abandoning my sacred duty to preserve Confederate memory. I was betraying the South itself. I did not care. I boarded the northbound train. New York embraced me immediately. This widow of a failed Confederate president brought sophistication, history, celebrity. I was a living artifact of American history, a woman who had walked through national devastation. I was invited to salons. I was welcomed in literary circles. I became friends with intellectuals and artists. I was simply myself. No judgment followed. I became a New York lady. I took daily rides in my carriage through Central Park. I attended concerts and theatrical productions. I visited exhibitions and museums. I hosted small salons in my apartment. I read constantly. I wrote letters to friends across the country. I lived the life of an educated, cultured woman. Finally, 1893, I met Julia Dent Grant by accident at a Hudson River resort. Julia was the widow of Ulysses S. Grant, the man the South hated most. Yet we became friends. We both had sacrificed ourselves for great men. We both had lived through devastation. Our friendship shocked the nation completely. It meant everything. Our friendship symbolized national reconciliation. Former enemies became allies. History's antagonists found common ground. For me, it meant everything. I was no longer defined by my husband's politics or my region's prejudices. I had transcended my past. I had become reconciled with America itself. I had finally come home. I wrote prolifically for the New York World, articles about war, history, politics, women's rights. I wrote about my experiences as First Lady. I wrote to earn a living, but also to establish my own legacy. I was no longer just the wife of Jefferson Davis. I was a writer. I was an intellectual. I was somebody. 1901. I published God in His wisdom had allowed the North to prevail. I was saying publicly what I had said privately in 1862. The North had won because it was God's will. I was absolving myself of the Confederacy's sins. I was claiming moral clarity. I was reclaiming my truth. I attended reunions of Confederate and Union veterans alike. I was a member of both the Daughters of the American Revolution and the United Daughters of the Confederacy. I moved between worlds, bridging them, refusing to let my life be defined by a single cause. I had spent decades serving the South. Now I was healing wounds. 1898. My youngest daughter, Winnie, died of gastritis at 34. Winnie had been my companion, my fellow writer, my link to the future. She had never married. She had never had a life independent of my shadow. Now she was gone. I considered returning south, surrendering to grief. I almost surrendered completely, but I chose to live fully. I continued writing. I continued socializing. I continued my daily rides through Central Park. I continued meeting with intellectuals and artists. I chose to fill my remaining years with meaning. I refused to become a monument to grief. I was 74. I had 14 more years to live. I used them all. I moved into apartments in Manhattan hotels. My final apartment overlooked Central Park, the city's great green heart, visible from my window. I looked out on trees and sky and life moving below. I was not looking backward anymore. I was looking outward, at the living world, at the future, at possibility, at life itself. Richmond offered me a house free of charge if I would return home. They wanted their old First Lady. I refused repeatedly and consistently. I preferred anonymity in the North to celebrity in the South. I preferred freedom to comfort. I preferred my New York apartment to the finest mansion in Mississippi. I was finally choosing myself. 1902. I sold Beauvoir to the Mississippi Division of the Sons of Confederate Veterans for $10,000. I stipulated it be used as a Confederate veterans' home and memorial. I was transforming my husband's estate into something public. I was ensuring his name would endure as historical artifact, not personal property, history, 1901. I attended a reception where I met Booker T. Washington, the African-American educator. We had a civil conversation. I treated him as an equal. This simple act scandalized conservative white Southerners. A Southern lady speaking respectfully to a black man. It was unthinkable. Yet I did it. I had lived long enough to see old prejudices. I did not simply survive my life. I transcended it. I was born into privilege, married into power, lived through national cataclysm, and died in a Manhattan hotel overlooking a beloved park. I had been a Whig, a First Lady, a Confederate widow, a journalist, a writer, a bridge between enemies. I had more identities than most. I had predicted the Confederacy's failure in 1862. I had known before most men that the South could not win. I had lived in that terrible knowledge, watching my husband lead a nation toward destruction, watching him refuse what I saw clearly. The war came and went exactly as I predicted. I lived long enough to be vindicated. Jefferson Davis is remembered as a historical figure, a presidential name, a monument in Richmond. But his monument exists partly because of my work. I wrote his memoir. I preserved his legacy. I ensured he would be remembered as a complicated man in a complicated age. I rehabilitated his reputation even as I renounced his cause. I had been born a half-breed, part North, part South, fully belonging to neither. I had lived my entire life split, divided, contradictory. In New York, this contradiction resolved. I claimed both my Northern heritage and my Southern history. I defended neither exclusively. I had finally integrated the warring parts of myself into a coherent whole. Every day in my final years, I took a carriage ride through Central Park. I watched the seasons change. I observed the city's life flowing around me. I was not a monument anymore. I was not a symbol, or a First Lady, or a relic. I was simply a woman in a park, watching the world, present to the moment. December 1906. I contracted pneumonia, the disease that had killed my husband. I was 80 years old. I lay in my apartment overlooking Central Park. I had lived long enough to see America reconcile. I had lived long enough to transform myself. Now, I was ready to rest. Death came for me. New York City gave me a funeral procession through its streets. The widow of the defeated Confederacy was honored by the victorious North. My coffin was transported by train to Richmond, Virginia, where I was buried beside my husband in Hollywood Cemetery. The tombstone read simply, "At peace." I had finally achieved what I sought, peace. Julia Dent Grant and I became symbols of national healing. Two women on opposite sides of the war's greatest division found friendship. This friendship was more powerful than political speeches, more meaningful than monuments, more healing than words. I had given America a gift. I had shown that enemies could become allies, that enemies could find love. If you had known what I knew, would you have spoken truth? Would you have faced exile and ruin? Or would you have remained silent and endured compromise? I lived a contradiction my entire life. What would you have done? How would you have survived such divided loyalties? These questions have no easy answers. Judge George Winchester had taught me to think critically. Philadelphia had taught me to value learning. The North had taught me that the South's ways were not the world's ways. I carried these lessons my entire life. Even when forced to serve the Confederacy, I held on to the education, the critical thinking, the intellectual independence. Education saved me. I lived 63 years before I was truly free. That freedom came only after my husband died, only after I moved north, only after I reinvented myself completely. I lost 2 decades of potential freedom to marriage, to a man who could never love me, but I seized whatever freedom remained. I lived my final years on my own terms. Remember where we started? I stand in my Manhattan hotel room, gazing at Central Park. Once, I was the Confederate First Lady. Once, I defended slavery while despising it. Once, I predicted our defeat. Now, I have become everything the South taught me to hate. I have escaped completely. I have found peace. In my old age, I wrote that everyone was a half-breed, mixed, hybrid, containing multitudes. I was right not only about myself, but about all humanity. We are all composites of different cultures, different regions, different identities. We all contain contradictions. We are all split between competing loyalties. We can acknowledge this division and become whole anyway. The city that offered me a free house never understood why I refused. They thought I should want to return, to be celebrated, to be a living monument to the lost cause. But I had spent 30 years in the South after the war. The South held nothing but pain. New York held freedom. I chose freedom. My career as a journalist proved women could write professionally, that women could contribute to newspapers, that women could earn money through their words. I succeeded where many failed. I published prolifically. I became known for my columns. I proved age was no obstacle. I proved a former First Lady could become something more. Margaret and Varina Ann bore children. Those children carried Howell and Davis blood forward. Varina's legacy lived in next generations. I named them after my ancestors. I ensured my name, my family's memory, my lineage would endure. I was the mother of memory. I was the keeper of family history. I was the bridge. The home that imprisoned me in life became a museum after my death. Beauvoir, the estate Sarah Dorsey left to Jefferson, that house now preserves the Davis legacy. Thousands of visitors walk through its rooms each year. The house that had been my gilded cage became my monument. Irony had the final word. Irony always does. Congress voted to pension the widows of Confederate generals. I was never included. I was the widow of the Confederate president himself, yet I received no government support. I had to work for a living when already in my 60s. The South, which claimed me as its daughter, abandoned me financially. Only the North offered employment. My closest companion in my final years was not a relative, but a friend. I developed genuine friendships in New York, people who valued my intellect, my conversation, my presence. I had escaped not only the South's limitations, but my family's emotional burdens. I had chosen my community. I had created my own family. These friendships sustained me most. I lived 80 years. The Civil War was fought when I was in my 30s. I lived 41 years after it ended. I lived long enough to see the South recover. I lived long enough to see the nation reconcile. I lived long enough to become obsolete, irrelevant, free. Then I used that irrelevance as freedom. My final carriage ride through Central Park was a moment of perfect peace. The trees were bare or green. The city moved around me. I was not afraid anymore. I had accomplished what I set out to do. I had become myself. I had found love in friendships. I had built a life independent of his shadow. October 18, 1906. I lay dying in my apartment overlooking Central Park. For the last time, I looked out on the trees, the sky, and the moving city below. I had lived 65 years before coming to New York. I had lived 15 years there, the freest of my entire life. Then I died, at peace. That is what my tombstone said. Not my name, not my accomplishments, not my titles. Just those two words. It was the ultimate truth of my life. Had never been at peace while living. I had always been anxious, divided, struggling. But in death, I found peace. The epitaph was my victory. The woman who became the Confederate First Lady was born with Northern blood, educated in the North, loved the North her entire life, befriended the North's widow, and died in the North. I was the least Southern of First Ladies, yet the South claims me as theirs. History's cruelest joke is that I became famous for the role I hated. If you are watching this, you are asking yourself, could I have done what she did? Could I have escaped? Could I have become myself? Could I have chosen freedom over comfort, truth over loyalty, my own life over duty to others? These are the right questions. These are the questions that matter most. Remember scene 3? Imagine inheriting a title you never wanted, married to a man twice your age, forced to lead a nation towards certain defeat. Then ask yourself, when given the chance, would you flee to New York and denounce everything? I answered yes. I chose freedom. I chose truth. I chose myself. The American Civil War ended in 1865, but reconciliation continues still. I spent my life moving between North and South, between past and future, between loyalty and conscience. I did not resolve the war that tore America apart, but I lived in that unresolved tension with grace. I showed that enemies could become allies. I was a bridge between Northern and Southern worlds, between my husband's memory and historical truth, between the lost cause and national reconciliation, between old me and new me. I spent my entire life crossing between opposing shores. I never fully belonged anywhere, but I learned to love that crossing. I learned to love that bridge. If there is an afterlife, I hope to meet Judge Winchester again. I hope to sit with him in a library with endless books. I hope to discuss what I have read, what I have learned, who I have become. I hope to thank him for teaching me to think, to question, to resist, to become myself. To Jefferson, I would say, I loved you when I should have loved myself. I sacrificed myself when I should have demanded reciprocation. I was your wife, but I should have been your equal. You could never see me because you were too haunted by your ghost. I forgive you. I have finally forgiven myself. To the women watching this, do not wait until you are 63 to become yourself. Do not sacrifice decades to men who cannot love you equally. Do not defend causes you do not believe in. Do not live a lie for comfort. Choose freedom earlier. Choose truth sooner. Do not wait, as I did. I saw the future before anyone else did. I saw the South's defeat before the war began. But knowing the future does not prevent it. Knowing what is coming does not make it any less terrible. I had to watch my prophecy come true. I had to live through the disaster I had foreseen. This was my particular curse. I became a woman who could stand on equal ground with Lincoln's widow. I became a woman who could speak truth to power. I became a woman who could write, publish, earn money, live independently. I became a woman nobody could have predicted I would become. I became myself. This is what mattered. This is what I fought for. Imagine a photograph taken in 1895. I am 69 years old. I am dressed in elegant black. I am standing in front of a New York building. My face shows no sadness, no regret, no longing backward. I am looking forward. I am looking toward the future. I am looking like a woman who has become free. I left behind thousands of published articles. I left behind a memoir that told my version of history. I left behind the friendship with Julia Grant that symbolized national healing. I left behind Beauvoir, transformed into a museum. I left behind proof that a woman could reinvent herself completely. I left behind a question: could you do what I did? I did not build a physical monument. I did not leave behind a university or a hospital with my name. But I built something more important. I built a life that mattered. I built a model of transformation. I built proof that enemies could become allies. I built a bridge between warring Americas. That was my monument. The South would never truly reckon with its sins. The nation would take generations to reconcile. But I would not be there to see the ending. I would die in 1906, thinking the work was just beginning. I would die believing that healing was possible, that enemies could become friends, that truth could prevail eventually. I stand in my Manhattan apartment one final time. Central Park stretches below. The sun is setting over the Hudson River. I am 80 years old. I have lived longer than most. I have lived more fully than most. I have loved less than I deserved. I have learned more than I expected. I have become everything I fought for. After I died, my chair in the salon remained empty. My desk in the New York World office remained empty. My apartment overlooking Central Park remained empty. The woman who had filled rooms with her presence, her conversation, her brilliance, she was gone. But her words remained. Her writing remained. Her legacy remained. She remained. I wish I could speak to the women watching this now. I wish I could tell them, do not wait. Do not compromise. Do not defend what you do not believe. Do not love men who cannot love you back equally. Do not sacrifice yourself on the altar of duty. Become yourself. Do it now. Do not wait until you are dying to live. Remember how we began? I stood in a Manhattan hotel, gazing at Central Park. I asked, how did I escape? Now you know. I escaped by becoming myself. I escaped by refusing to accept the limitations of my birth. I escaped by leaving the South. I escaped by choosing freedom over comfort. I escaped by becoming who I always wanted to be. Now I ask you, what are you escaping? What do you need to escape? What lies are you defending? What causes do you serve that your heart does not believe in? What man or woman are you sacrificing yourself for? What would your life look like if you chose freedom tomorrow? If you chose yourself? Answer these questions. Answer them now. My name is Varina Howell Davis. I was born in 1826 on a Louisiana plantation. I died in 1906 in a Manhattan hotel. I lived 80 years. I lived as a plantation daughter, senator's wife, first lady, war widow, impoverished exile, and finally, at last, as myself. I found peace, at peace, at peace.